Most people spend more time planning a 2-week summer vacation than they ever spend planning the lives they wake up to every single morning. They research flights, hotels, restaurants, weather, itineraries. They obsess over every detail. Yet when it comes to the most valuable asset they own, their time, their energy, their future, they leave it to chance. They wake up on Monday morning like a leaf caught in a storm, hoping the wind somehow pushes them in the right direction. But hope is not a strategy, and drifting is not destiny. Success does not randomly happen to you. Success is designed, engineered, and executed with intention long before Monday morning ever arrives. If you want to own your week, you must architect it before the sun rises on Monday. You don't stumble into a powerful life, you build one. And the difference between people who command their weeks and people who survive them has nothing to do with talent, intelligence, or luck. It has everything to do with intention. One group lives in reaction, the other lives in design. Most people live in what can only be described as the drift. The drift is subtle. It feels normal. It even feels productive at times. You wake up, check your phone, respond to messages, skim emails, attend meetings, handle problems, put out fires, scroll a little, answer more emails, and by the end of the day, you're exhausted. You've been busy all day, yet somehow nothing meaningful has moved forward. By Wednesday, your energy is gone. By Friday, frustration sets in because you worked 50 or 60 hours and still feel no closer to the life you say you want. In American culture, being busy has become a badge of honor. We celebrate burnout, we praise long hours, we equate motion with progress. But here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to face. Being busy is often just a sophisticated way of avoiding the hard work of thinking. Thinking requires clarity. Clarity requires honesty. And honesty forces you to confront whether your actions actually align with your goals. It's much easier to stay busy than to sit down and ask yourself where you're really going. The drift happens when you allow other people's priorities to define your day. Emails dictate your mood. Meetings dictate your focus. News headlines dictate your emotions. Social media dictates your attention. You are constantly reacting instead of creating. And reaction is exhausting because you're always one step behind. The drift doesn't ruin your life all at once. It erodes it slowly, week by week, year by year, until one day you wake up wondering how you ended up so far from the person you thought you'd become. The alternative to the drift is the drive, and the drive always begins with clarity. Clarity is not a motivational buzzword. Clarity is power. Clarity is leverage. Clarity is the difference between someone who moves mountains and someone who stays stuck for decades. When you have clarity, decisions become easier. Distractions lose their grip. Noise fades into the background. Without clarity, even the most talented people spin their wheels forever. Ask yourself this question, and don't soften it, don't overthink it, and don't avoid it. In the next 7 days, what is the one outcome that, if achieved, would make everything else easier or irrelevant? Not 10 things, not a vague intention, one outcome. If you can't answer that question in 5 seconds, you are not ready for Monday. Because if you don't decide what matters most, the world will decide for you. High performers don't do more, they do less, better. They understand leverage. They understand that not all effort is created equal. This is where most people misunderstand productivity. They think productivity is about squeezing more tasks into the day. It's not. Productivity is about identifying the few actions that actually move the needle and eliminating or minimizing everything else. We all know the idea that a small percentage of actions create the majority of results, but knowing it intellectually and living it operationally are two very different things. Most people claim to believe in leverage, yet they structure their weeks around the trivial. They spend their best hours on low-impact tasks. They protect meetings instead of momentum. They respond to emails faster than they work on their future. The truth is brutal but freeing. If you don't ruthlessly protect what matters, what doesn't matter will consume your life. The trivial many are relentless. They will always be louder than the vital few. They will always feel urgent, but urgency is not importance. The world will constantly reward you for being available, responsive, and agreeable. It will rarely reward you for being focused, disciplined, and selective. That reward comes later, and only if you're willing to delay gratification. Every week has a small number of activities that create disproportionate results. These are the conversations that change trajectories, the deep work sessions that compound over time, the skills that raise your value in the marketplace, and the strategic thinking that prevents you from running in the wrong direction. Everything else is support, noise, or distraction. Jim Rohn once said, "Don't major in minor things." Most people do the exact opposite, then wonder why their lives feel small. If you want to operate at a higher level, you must decide in advance what your week is about, not what you'll respond to, but what you'll build. That decision should be made before the chaos begins, before the emails, before the notifications, before the meetings. When you don't decide ahead of time, you default into reaction mode, and reaction mode is where dreams quietly die. Another silent killer of momentum is mental clutter. An unorganized mind is a stressed mind. When tasks live only in your head, your brain is forced to constantly rehearse them to avoid forgetting them. That background noise drains energy you don't even realize you're losing. You feel tired before you start, not because the work is hard, but because your mind is overloaded. High performers don't rely on memory. They rely on systems. They get ideas, tasks, and commitments out of their heads and into a trusted external structure. This creates immediate relief. When your mind knows it doesn't have to remember everything, it can finally focus on executing one thing well. Before a new week begins, everything must come out. Every obligation, every idea, every concern, every unfinished task. No judgment, no organizing, just extraction. Once it's out, you regain control. Chaos loses its power the moment it becomes visible. Then comes discernment. Not everything that can be done should be done. Not everything that demands attention deserves it. Some things should be eliminated entirely. Others should be handed off. Some should be executed immediately because they're small and lingering, and the rest should be intentionally scheduled instead of vaguely kept in mind. When you do this, anxiety transforms into action. You stop trying to remember and start executing. The most dangerous phrase in modern culture is, "I'll get to it." That phrase is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid deciding. High performers decide. They decide what stays, what goes, and what waits. Indecision is a form of self-sabotage disguised as flexibility. Designing your week is not about rigidity, it's about intentionality. It's about choosing your constraints instead of letting circumstances choose them for you. When you decide in advance how your energy will be spent, you reclaim authority over your life. You stop being a passenger and become the driver. Monday morning should not feel like an ambush. It should feel like execution. When the week is designed ahead of time, you wake up with direction instead of dread. You know what matters, you know where your focus goes, and you know what winning looks like for the next 7 days. Most people wait for motivation to act. Disciplined people act first and let motivation catch up. Intention creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence compounds into identity. Over time, you stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who executes. This is how destinies are shaped, not by grand gestures, but by weekly decisions made in quiet moments when no one is watching. Sunday night is more powerful than Monday morning. Planning is not passive. Planning is an act of leadership over your own life. Stop drifting. Stop reacting. Stop hoping the week turns out well. Design it, because the life you want is not built in moments of inspiration. It's built in moments of intention, long before the noise begins. Time is the only asset in the world that you can never earn back. You can lose $1 million and make $2 million next year. You can destroy your reputation and rebuild it over time. You can fall behind and catch up again. But if you lose a Tuesday afternoon, it's gone forever. Not delayed, not postponed, gone. And the uncomfortable truth is this: most people give away their time every single day without even realizing it. They donate it to distractions. They surrender it to other people's agendas. They bleed it away in low-value activity and call it being busy. The difference between leaders and followers is not intelligence, talent, or opportunity. It's authority over time. A follower lets the day run them. A leader runs the day. A follower reacts. A leader decides. And if you don't consciously decide how your time will be used, it will be claimed by the loudest voice in the room. Execution is where everything either comes alive or quietly dies. Ideas are cheap, motivation is temporary, inspiration fades. Execution is the engine. It's the thing that turns intention into reality. Without execution, clarity is just a fantasy, and planning is just mental entertainment. Most people in America love the idea of productivity, but they confuse activity with execution. They build endless to-do lists and feel productive just by writing things down. But to-do lists are where dreams go to die. Why? Because lists ignore the one constraint that actually matters: time. You can write down 50 tasks, but you still only get 24 hours in a day, and most of those hours are already compromised by obligations, fatigue, and distraction. High performers don't manage tasks, they manage time. They understand a simple rule that average people resist: if it's not scheduled, it's not real. Intentions that don't live on your calendar are just wishes. Goals that aren't protected by time blocks are just hopes dressed up as ambition. This is where most people sabotage themselves. They identify what matters, but they never defend it. They say deep work is important, but they never block time for it. They say health matters, but the gym never makes it onto the calendar. They say family is everything, but there's always work in the way. Your calendar doesn't lie. It is the most honest mirror you own. It shows what you truly value, not what you claim to value. When you take the high-value activities you identified earlier and physically lock them into your calendar, something powerful happens. They stop being optional. They stop being negotiable. They become appointments with your future. And here's the key difference between amateurs and professionals. Amateurs cancel appointments with themselves. Professionals don't. Deep work requires isolation, not isolation from people, but isolation from noise. Phones off, notifications silenced, no open-door policy, no multitasking, just focused effort on the work that actually moves your life forward. Most people say they can't focus. That's not true. They just refuse to remove distractions. Focus isn't found, it's enforced. Another mistake people make is overscheduling. They stack tasks back to back as if life will politely cooperate. Then the first delay cascades into frustration, stress, and mental chaos. High-level execution requires margin. Buffer time isn't laziness, it's professionalism. It's the difference between someone who stays calm under pressure and someone whose entire day collapses because of one unexpected delay. When you build space into your schedule, you stay in control even when things go wrong. You stop rushing, you stop snapping at people, you stop feeling behind before the day even ends. Margin gives you power. Margin gives you composure. And composure is a competitive advantage in a world addicted to urgency. Time mastery alone, however, is not enough. You can have the perfect calendar and still sabotage yourself with the wrong mindset. Execution does not happen in a vacuum. It happens inside your mind, and the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your results. Most people wake up on Monday already defeated. They replay last week's failures. They focus on what's missing. They complain about what didn't get, what didn't work, and what should have been different. They start the week from a position of scarcity. And scarcity thinking is deadly. It makes you defensive. It makes you rigid. It makes you blind to opportunity. Here's the paradox most people never learn. Success doesn't create happiness. Happiness creates success. A grateful mind is a sharp mind. A bitter mind is a slow mind. In high-pressure environments, the person who can regulate their emotional state has a massive advantage over the person who can't. This is why gratitude isn't soft, it's strategic. It rewires how you interpret reality. When you train your mind to recognize what's working, you shift from survival mode into creation mode. You stop operating from fear and start operating from confidence. When you begin your week by acknowledging progress, lessons, and wins, no matter how small, you change your internal posture. You stop seeing problems as threats and start seeing them as challenges. You stop seeing obstacles as signals to quit and start seeing them as feedback. Visualization works the same way. When you intentionally picture the successful completion of your week, you're not fantasizing, you're programming. Your brain does not distinguish well between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When you see yourself executing, finishing strong, and closing the week with momentum, your mind starts looking for behaviors that align with that image. This is how elite performers stay composed under pressure. They rehearse success before it happens. They don't wait to feel confident. They act as if confidence is inevitable. And over time, it becomes so. Your mind has a filtering system. It decides what you notice and what you ignore. When you focus on problems, you see more problems. When you focus on opportunities, you see openings others miss. Gratitude and visualization tune that filter. They don't change reality. They change how you engage with it. Execution is not about grinding yourself into the ground. It's about alignment. When your calendar reflects your priorities and your mindset supports your actions, work stops feeling like constant resistance. Momentum builds, energy compounds. You start finishing days feeling accomplished instead of depleted. At the end of the day, life is a story. And most people are not the authors of that story. They're characters reacting to events written by someone else. Their boss writes the chapters, their circumstances write the dialogue, their past writes the plot twists. But at some point, you have to decide whether you're going to keep reading or finally start writing. This week is not just another week, it's a statement, a declaration that you are done drifting, a decision that you will no longer give your best hours to your lowest priorities. You now have the clarity to know what matters. You have the organization to carry the load. You have the calendar to protect what's important, and you have the mindset to enjoy the process instead of resenting it. That combination is rare, and rare combinations produce uncommon results. Don't turn this into entertainment. Don't nod along and do nothing. Execution is the separator. A year from now, you will not regret the things you tried and failed. You will regret the weeks you wasted pretending you were too busy to build the life you wanted. So own your Monday, command your week, protect your time like the priceless asset it is, because the future you're hoping for isn't waiting for permission, it's waiting for execution. God bless. Now get to work.